What's up, YouTube? It's the homie Joshua. I'm back with the homie Hangout. Remember, homie stands for helping others move in excellence. And today I'm going to talk about pulling up to San Quentin, right? Back in 1996 for reception. And I had quite an experience at Quentin. So it's, like I said, it's 96, it's winter time. Pull up to San Quentin, and they got these holding tanks in reception, big holding tanks. So I'm thrown in there, and somebody tells me, hey man, snatch this roll of toilet paper, right? Because every extra supply helps. I said, okay, cool. And I had come with a bunch of stamped envelopes, right? Because that's like money, and so the county, I had heard, stack up on your stamped envelopes. And then you got to go to like this class kind of down the way a little bit, where they teach you about AIDS and other communicable diseases behind the wall and whatnot. And I had a homeboy from San Francisco that taught that class. Somebody I was familiar with, right? Maybe to call him a homeboy is a stretch, but somebody I was familiar with. He's also a northerner. And so he was teaching that class, or one of the people teaching it. And then their hustle is to sell tobacco to everybody coming from reception. Smoking was allowed in prison back then. You could buy, tobacco in canteen and whatnot. So I go and they're hustling, and he gives me like a quarter can of tobacco and some papers just on strength. Here you go, homie. I was like, man, good looking out, right? So I got to save some of my stamped envelopes. So I go, and we're walking on the line, right? And the COs are kind of breaking off. Okay, we'll go over here, we'll go over there. And so West Block was the primary reception spot for people in general. One side, they have yard side and bay side. And to be honest, I forget which was which, but one side had northerners and everybody else, and the other side had southerners and everybody else. Back then, southerners weren't rocking in Quentin, right? And so I go, but I'm not going to West Block. And I'm like, man. And so I'm one of only like two people. We pull up to Carson section, which is a little bit of a hike. Now, mind you, I'm in a paper jumpsuit, right? And it's raining, so I'm getting wet. What little stuff I have is in a paper bag. I was not wearing shoes when I caught my case that would be allowed in Quentin, so I didn't have no shoes. And so we're walking, getting rained on, keep standing up against walls so people can go wherever. And I walk into Carson section because that was for people who had 10 years or more, or were a level 4 last time they were in prison. So it's 5 tiers, all on one side of the wall, right? So the bottom tier is for like workers and disabled folks. The second tier was PCs, and I think probably PCs for the main line too. But regardless, that was all PC folks. And then the third, fourth, and fifth tier was just regular people, right? So I walk in, you stop at this little station, basically like a little desk almost. And I'm waiting, the SEALs are talking. And the first thing I notice is, one, it's loud. It was loud as hell, right? And up, like if you look towards the top tier, there's just a layer of smoke up there from all the smoking that was going on. There's little papers floating in the air. People are shooting lines down and catching lines, and I'm seeing all these strings getting fished up and down. There's people running around on the tiers. Not many, but a few, right? It's kind of late in the evening at this point. And like after dinner time, I'd say. And so there's people climbing on the bars, because each tier is also barred, right? So you can't throw people off. So people would climb, but you can slide in between. And so people would climb up the bars to get from one tier to the next. The PC tier had like a fence thing right there, if I remember right. And so you couldn't climb onto their tier. But yeah, it was unlike anything I experienced. I was in the county, in Contra Costa County. I caught my case for attempted murder out of Pittsburgh. Shot somebody in the neck. That'll be another story at another time. And so, and I stayed in Q module there. And so, nonetheless, it was unlike an environment I'd been in. No juvenile hall, no nothing had looked like that. And I was like, oh shit, I'm in prison, right? Like, this is prison. And these are grown-ass men walking around. And I'm like 150 pounds, right? A little over 6 feet, probably 150 pounds. And so the CO's like, hey, here's your cell, and I was on the 4th tier, and so I think like cell 41 maybe, and so there's 50 cells on a tier, and so he's like, just go up there and stand by your door, I'll let you in. That was it. No escort, no nothing, just go to your cell, I'll let you in. And I'm like, okay, shit, right? So I go, there's some stairs kind of in the middle, so I go up the stairs, and I get up to the 4th tier, and I'm walking, and homeboys are stopping me as I walk. Well, first a Wood, right, was like, what's up, man, how you doing? And I was just respectful. I was like, man, I'm good, and kept walking, right? And I'll get back to that, that'll wrap back around in a second. And so I'm walking, and somebody's like, hey, you rascal? I said, yeah. Hey, do me a favor, shoot this magazine over here. And I was like, wow, these dudes already know I'm here. Like, I'm playing for the right team, right? In my mind, like, damn, this is sophisticated shit, right? And so, because I'm not a big homie, I'm a nobody. I'm a knucklehead from the streets. But that was a level of contacts, I guess you could say, that Northerners had in San Quentin. And so really nothing was going on without folks knowing. And so I'm passing magazines, left and right, and then a homeboy's like, hey man, why don't you just go back to your cell and bring this with you? And so I go to my cell, and my celly's a youngster, and he's like, oh, what's up, man, you rascal? I said, yeah. All right, cool, just post up right here, and the homies will come, or the COs will come and let you in. And so he goes, hey, did you go down to the homie cell and talk to him? And I was like, man, I think I was over there and got a magazine or something. He's like, all right, cool. So the CO comes and unlocks a bar, lets me in my cell. And we have a brief little conversation. Mind you, I'd never written an essay in jail. I'd never turned in any paperwork. My criminal case paperwork, but it's pretty cut and dry. Right, I shot somebody, I turned myself in. I was snitched on by the person I turned myself in to save from having to do time, and I didn't know that in advance. And I took a deal for 10 years. And so, and that was my first term as an adult. I'd gone to the county in San Mateo County for like 3 days when I first turned 18, but that was it. And so we're in there talking, and he's like, hey, you got to write up like your name and your CDC number and where you've been, blah blah blah. And so I write it, but I write it like normal writing on a page. And he's like, oh no man, that's just way too big, right? You gotta write smaller. And I think that day I wrote like 3 lines in a line. I would eventually get to the point where 5 lines in a line was pretty standard, but I wasn't quite there that day. And I was like, hey bro, I got this tobacco. Oh man, cool, so we're smoking. So everything's fairly normal, right? We come out for chow in the morning. You all line up on a tier, walk down the stairs, go to the chow hall. Met a lot of homeboys then because they'll kind of wait so that we line up together and go down there. So met a lot of homies on a tier then. Met some of the homies from the 5th tier. If I remember, I think the 3rd tier was mostly like hot med people, but I could be wrong. Anyway, so things are relatively uneventful, right? My celly gets transpacked and moved out, and I move in with another guy. And so, actually, no, let me rewind. So my celly was this dude, I believe his name was Toker, but he was on the 5th tier. So I'm with him for a little bit. He, transpacks, he goes out to some general population yard, and then I move down to the 4th tier. And I'm in a cell with this dude who's also named Rascal, right? But he's from Hayward. Used to raise pit bulls and that kind of stuff. Anyway, so I'm in there with him. This is not his first term, but he's not particularly engaged with politics. And he's not that much older than me. It's probably mid-20s. And a few things happened during my time there. So I got pretty comfortable pretty quick, right? And so one of the incidents was we had bought some wine off the tier, right? Some black dudes were selling wine. And he's like, what's up, man? You want to buy some wine? I said, sure. So we bought it. We got like 2 tumblers, right? He drank one, I drank one. To be honest, it was pretty bunk. I wound up having much better wine, through the years. But I didn't know, like there was no written HHPs that were given to me, nothing else. It was verbally the basics, right? You have to come out to yard. Movement is mandatory. If you observe anything or have any unusual encounters on movement, you got to let the homies know when you get back. And that was it, right? Don't horseplay, don't set trip, and that was it. There's no Southerners in the section, so it's us, blacks, whites, and others. There was no active conflict with any of those groups, and so there was no schooling, right? It was actually kind of laid back, and so, anyways, we get this wine, and we drink it, and it wasn't that impressive. But it's like the middle of the day, and so a few hours later, a homeboy comes by, and he's like, "What's up, man? How you doing?" And I've probably been there a couple weeks at the time. How you doing? What you up to? Just kind of BSing, right? Shooting the shit. Because he was out, I don't know, he might have went to medical or somewhere else, and just folks would try to run around and check in with everybody before they were kind of forced to lock it up in their cell. Nobody wants to sit in your cell if you don't have to. And you can't just go in there when you want. You have to wait for the CO to walk all the way up there and come open it. So might as well just bullshit until they get at you. And so I was like, man, it's cool. I said, bro, we bought some wine earlier from this fool. That shit didn't do nothing. And he's like, oh, really? I was like, yeah. He was like, oh, okay, cool. And he walks off. Next thing you know, me and my celly are in trouble, right? Because you're not allowed to drink. At least, while the bar's unlocked, especially. And so I was like, damn, but I didn't know any better. And so I'm outside in the yard. I'm doing extra burpees. This is the first place that I've done burpees. First place that I've done any real calisthenic routine, period. And it took me a while to get up to par, right? Some of those dudes were just machines, literally, like we called it machina, and some of them really were machines. And so me, not so much, right? But I did my thing and held my own and threw up sometimes, and then just moved the towel in front of throw up and keep going because you can't take breaks. And so now we got to go through the regular exercise when we go out to the yard, and then I had to do more, right? Me and my son had to do more burpees, so he wasn't too thrilled. He's like, bro, why'd you just tell on us? I didn't know I was telling. I didn't know I did anything wrong. So learn that lesson. And then there was another situation. So we had a little handball wall there, right? A handball wall, some bar work. And for the exercise at Quentin, it wasn't like exercise in the hole. The couple times that I went to the hole where we actually had group yard and we weren't isolated, it wasn't everybody bust down at the same time. Right, it was a handful of people over here busting down and somebody watching over, and a handful of people over here busting down. It wasn't large group stuff. And so, anyways, I'm waiting one day to play handball, and I had just lit a cigarette, right? Just rolled a cigarette, lit it, and there was this Africano dude who used to, pick up cigarette butts off the ground, and we called him Sniper, right? Because little cigarette butts, and not even butts because there was no filter on them, but the tail of cigarettes are sometimes called snipes. And so we called him Sniper. I don't know what his real name was, but he would pick up butts off the ground. And the dude was cool, right? A little J-Caddish, but respectable, nice guy, quiet. And so I had just lit the cigarette, and now it's my time to play handball. And so I tossed it to the side. We have plenty of tobacco. I threw it to the side, and then I see Sniper. And I'm like, hey, bro, hey, if you want, that shit probably still lit right there. That's a good size. Got disciplined for that. Why are you disrespecting other group segments? I was like, there's not disrespect. I thought I was just, like, he picks up cigarette butts off the ground. I just threw one on the ground. It wasn't like I stepped on it and gave it to him, Nah, bro, you can't do that. That's disrespectful, and we need to carry ourselves with the utmost respect and integrity, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And I would argue a little bit here and there, but at that stage, not really much, because I didn't know much. And I don't want to ruffle feathers, right? So another thing I had gotten in trouble for was so it's common in San Quentin, at least from my limited experience there. Some people would sing, right? And they had a couple black dudes that at the bar, like, bro, they would sing and like oldie, R&B songs and stuff from the 90s, which it was, and stuff from a little bit before. And some of them could really sing, like they blowed. And we'd all just kind of sit back, and it was like listening to a radio station. right? We didn't have TVs, we didn't have radios, we didn't have nothing in our cell. So it was a little bit of free entertainment. But there was also this paisa that would sing. And he would sing, obviously, all kinds of Spanish songs. And folks would give him his space to sing. And that was great. And so there's this Spanish song that starts out, you know, Cantar no llores, right? And it's a very popular song. So one day it's kind of quiet. And I was like, hey, paisa. And he was right above me. And he goes, yeah. And I said, Cantar no llores. And he starts out, ay, right? And starts singing. Got in trouble for that. Why are you disrespecting other group segments over the tier? And that one I kind of argued. I was like, bro, how's it disrespect? Like, the dude sings a song fucking 3 times a week. That specific song, let alone a bunch of others. I put in a request, which was not unusual. People would holler, hey, bro, let's get some of this. Hey, let's get some of that. And the paisas would do the same. And so, obviously, I'm not a paisa, but I just, you know, like I said, I got pretty comfortable there. And so, you know, I'm a kid. I'm just, hey, bro, sing the song. And he sang it, and I was like, man, it's pretty cool. It's like calling the radio station to put in a request, and you actually get through. And you're like, fuck, they're playing the jam I wanted. So, but I got in trouble for that. I had to do burpees, and then I had to write an essay. And so that was my first time writing an essay, but there was no real schooling behind it. I just had to write an essay. Why we don't disrespect other group segments, right? And so I said, fine. And it was like a 250 word. You know, it was nothing really to it. I think it was like 250 words. And so, and I bounced around a bit in Quentin between the 4th and 5th tier because people are always, you know, moving out, right? It's a short-term setup. And so then, another interesting experience, I'm in the chow hall, and I've been there probably like a month. And I'm in the chow hall, and when we would go to chow, sometimes we'd be able to see the other chow hall, and you'd see like West Block coming, right? And so, and the fellas would yell over, right? Oh, what's up, homie? I see you over there. How you doing? You're back. And, you know, a lot of these dudes have been through the system before, obviously. This wasn't the first time, so, or they recognize folks in the neighborhood or whatever. And I recognized a dude that we called Peanut, and I recognized him from the county. In the county, he was a northerner for the brief time that he was there. Never did anything, never helped me, but, you know, technically he was a homeboy. And so I see him walking over there. And I was like, hey, what's up, Peanut? Hey, what's up, homie? It's Rascal. And he's not looking, he's just looking dead ahead. And so, and the homeboys start teasing me. They're like, fool, who you hollering at? And I was like, oh, bro, that dude right there that's got the shaved head and a little kind of long hair fucking in the back. And like, that ain't no homeboy. I was like, nah, I was just in the county with him. You know, he was a homeboy in the county. Like, look who he's walking with, bro. He's running paisa now. And I was like, oh, okay. My bad. I met dude as a northerner. And so I thought it was odd that people would claim one thing in the streets and even claim that in the county and then go to prison and choose to rock with somebody else. And he was a little bit older than me. So I don't know. I don't remember if he'd been to prison before. But you know, like I could have ran with the woods, I suppose, if I wanted to. I wasn't all tatted back. But the thought never crossed my mind because I never rocked as a wood nowhere. Like I've been a northerner all my life. I was a northerner in the county. Why would I not be a northerner when I go to prison? Right? To me, it was kind of a no-brainer. But apparently for some people, there's a debate. And I get that, and I'm not judging folks for taking the path that they take. It's just to me that did not seem an option. And so, anyways, there was that. And then kind of my big incident, if you want to say. So a homeboy comes, and he's a YA reject. And I think he had gotten out of YA and gone to the streets and come back. Maybe he had come straight from YA. I don't remember. But I know him from the streets, right? And he's from a barrio called West Side 18th Street in San Mateo. They started in San Francisco, but they wound up branching out to San Mateo and kind of just developing more of a stronghold there, while the 18th Street neighborhood in San Francisco in terms of northerners kind of died down. And they were mostly Central Americans, just like the 18th Street in the city, you know, as it became more of a southerner stronghold, was influenced a lot by Central Americans. It's a whole nother story for another spiel. But I knew him from the streets, and I knew him from juvenile hall, and I knew him to be a northerner. But his only tattoos was like an XV3 right here inside his finger, and then he had 3 little dots right here, the whole Mi Vida Loca thing, right? That was it. And they called him Polo. And so he pulls up, and the homeboys are shooting like a filter around in terms of, hey, does anybody know this guy? And they have his real name, right? And they have what he says his nickname is in his neighborhood. And I'm like, no, I know him, right? I know his full name. Like, I know the dude well. And I was like, I know him, man. He's a homeboy. And like, suspect, because he's got that XV3 and he's got those 3 dots. I was like, no, you don't understand. He's not from 18th Street down south, and he's not a sureño from 18th Street in San Francisco. He's a homeboy, and I tried to explain. And I found it kind of odd that these other folks didn't know about that, right? Didn't know that there was a northern neighborhood that went by 18th Street in San Mateo and had started in San Francisco. So I was kind of thrown off, but I didn't feel like I was overstepping, right? I know him, and he's a homeboy. And so the homie tells me, the homie that's running the little section, who I butted heads with a lot, right? He says, hey, so you co-signed for him. Now again, nobody taught me what co-sign means. Warning, don't co-sign for people in prison. I go, yeah, man, he's a homeboy, right? Garrett, I'm telling you now, he's not a Southsider, and he's a homeboy. And again, there's no Southsiders in that section. So were he to be determined to be a Southsider, he would have been moved on. But the administration wouldn't have thrown a Southsider over there either. So anyways, as I said, the rules are it's mandatory yard, right? So yard comes along, it's raining, it's storming. I think that's the same year that they sent a bunch of people from Tracy reception over to San Quentin because Tracy flooded. Like, it was a rough winter, right? And so yard comes up, and he don't want to go out. He's like, no, I'm cool. I don't have a jacket. All I got is this jumpsuit. It's fucking raining outside. I'm not going to go out. I'm going to pass. And I don't know if that stuff's acceptable in YA. I've never been to YA. And I know not every YA operates exactly the same in terms of protocols for different group segments. But he was just like, I'm good. So the homeboys go, and they wind up tipping him up, right? But in the cell. So he doesn't get removed. They sock him up in the cell, and then there's a question of, is he going to lock it up, or is he going to stay? He doesn't lock it up, right? And so we bring him food every meal until he kind of, it was mostly like body sauce and rib sauce, but he had got caught in the face a couple times, and so he didn't come out of his cell until he looked clear, like till he was clean and he wouldn't draw attention to himself. And after that, he came to every yard, right? So I didn't think nothing of it, and kind of put a pin in that, and we'll show how it's relevant in a minute. So the other thing that was common is northerners would be sold up with paisas, right? Just a space thing. And so if there's an open cell, who knows what's going in there, right? And so there's a homeboy and a paisa celled up on the 4th tier. And then like a few cells down, there's a different homeboy and a paisa celled up. So one night they decide to switch cells. Then this wasn't too uncommon. People would go in someone else's cell to get tattoos or just to hang out and bullshit kind of during the day, and then just try to sneak out at a bar unlock or something. And people would go spend the night, and it's such a fluid turnover. SEALs ain't necessarily paying attention. They just want to see a body, right? You got 2 bodies in there, you're fine. And so they switch. Well, the homies that are now in a cell together wind up going through the paisa's paperwork, just being nosy, looking around, probably stealing shit from them. I don't know. They were jerks, right? So, which is interesting because you go back to the whole, you can't ask a paisa to sing a song that he sings all the time because it's disrespecting a group segment, but yet you can run through their stuff when they're not in the cell. But in this case, it turned out to be a good thing. They ran through his paperwork and found out that he was in there on a rape charge, right? And he had a crime meet. And so the next morning, the homeboys throw his mattress out here, throw all his stuff out, basically kick him out, bro. You got to get out of here, lock it up. The Paisas ain't really wanting to do a removal, and it's reception center. So, at least from my experience in Carson section, there wasn't a whole lot of violence. You'd have a fight here and there, but it wasn't like folks were getting yoked all the time. And I'm sure depending on the season you drove up in, that may or may not change, right? So, anyways, they kind of get rid of him in a non-violent but aggressive fashion. And that's that. But we have his paperwork. So a few days later, I think, maybe a week at the most, a dude moves in, and he's in cell 49 on the 4th tier, right? And so I'm just a couple cells down. We're the closest northerner cell to him, right? They call it the back of the bar, right? Far away from, obviously, the front. So it turns out, and he's identifying as a northerner, or he's identified by administration as a northerner, from, I believe, Santa Rosa, right? And so we see it's his name on the paperwork, because the homeboys get at him, hey, let's see your paperwork. Well, I don't really have no paperwork. What's your name? Here you go. And he was in a cell by himself. And so looking at the what he did submit, that's the dude who's in the paperwork from the Paisa. That's the crimey. So he is also a rapist, right? Obviously, rapists are not tolerated by anybody with the slightest bit of integrity and decency. So the homeboy's like, we gotta get rid of him. And they tap me, which I don't care. I was down to remove the dude anyways. But trip on this. They say, hey, Rascal, you owe cleanup. And I said, cleanup for what? Well, because you co-signed for the homeboy and he didn't program. Okay, but he turned out to be a homeboy, right? That's all I said. How do I know how he's going to program here? All I know is he's a northerner. That's what you asked me. And I said yes. And I was right. He is a homeboy and he is programming. Yeah, but you're responsible for all his behavior. How the fuck does that make sense? I'm 19 years old. He was in the Y for years. I haven't seen a dude in at that point, probably 10 years. And so, not 10 years. I wasn't 9 last time I seen him. But it had been a long time, right? But I'm in trouble again. Fucking Rascal's always getting in trouble. And I'm like, look, I'll smash the dude regardless. I said, you want me to stab him? And I'm like, no, just put hands on him. And this is how we're going to do it, right? Because you're the closest cell to him. Your celly's going to run point. When we go out for chow in the morning, kind of link up with him and walk together with him and try to set it up. We're going to try to move you guys up in a line so that when we walk back from chow, hurry up with him. Tell him you're going to go smoke a cigarette because he was asking for tobacco. Tell him you got some tobacco. You're going to go roll a cigarette with him. And kind of rush up to the 4th tier as soon as you can. Go straight back to his cell. Because the gunners are more likely to be in the front where people are coming up the stairs and going onto the tiers. And that's where the congestion is. And so that's where they're really watching and keeping an eye. They're not necessarily watching the back bar until about the time that the CO is ready to go back there and lock the bar. So I'm like, okay, cool. And so I said, just go put him on him, right? No problem. But I'm sitting in my cell and I'm pissed. I'm not pissed because I gotta smash this dude. I just got out of the county where I was fighting all the time anyways. I was pissed because of the notion that I had done something wrong and this was some kind of punishment. And again, I thought it was the dude that was in leadership there just had a thing for me. Maybe I look like somebody who slept with, his childhood love back in the days. I don't fucking know. But he had a thing for me. And so I go in the cell and I'm like, I'm gonna make a knife. Like, I'm gonna stab this dude. And my celly's like, bro, you don't wanna do that. You got some time on your shoulders. Don't be so quick to rush into something. The homeboy said, just go put hands on him. That's all you do. And the goal is for you to get away, right? So don't make shit hot by stabbing him. That's not what you're being asked to do. And you want to be careful. You don't want to be a torpedo. And he's kind of lecturing me. And in hindsight, his advice was sound. It was good advice. But I'm not listening. And so we had a bed spring that was already broken, right? And so a lot of prisons have a metal or even like incorporate a concrete slab that you put your bed on. But in Quentin, there's springs. And so there was a spring that was already broken, and I got it off. But here's the thing. It was shaped like this with a little bend, right? And I thought, oh, it's good because I could put it in my hand and punch with it. So I sharpened the end of it on the floor in the cell. It doesn't take much. It doesn't take a rocket science. I had not had any weaponry training, but this was not the most sophisticated instrument that you could make. So I sharpened it up, and my cellie's like, hey, you're gonna want to stash that, man, because what if they search the cell and find you with a knife? Then you're gonna go to the hole. The homeboy's gonna be pissed, like, hey, why does this fool have a knife in the cell? We didn't know. You're gonna wind up getting in trouble in the hole. You've already been getting in trouble, so you should stash it. And I said, okay, where do I stash it? Right? And where they can't find it. And so we got a little thread from the boxers, and there's a little round vent down by the toilet in the back of the wall in the San Quentin cells. And mind you, the cell is only wide enough for me to put my hand out this way and like this much on this way. And that's including the bunk. And so the back cell, there's the toilet, is on the back wall. In that cell, there was a locker up there. Sometimes they're both above the bunks, sometimes only one. And so anyways, the vent is right there, and it has these holes in there. So he's like, just tie a string and fish it in there, right? I was like, oh, that's slick, because you can't really see the string. Worked out great. So I fished it in there. He tied it up for me, and I fished it in there, and then tied off the string at the end of the vent. And I was like, great. So the morning I get up and, get ready, wash my face, right? Get ready to go to chow. And I go to fish the little pedazo that I made out. And my mom brings the chow. I'm going to come back. I'm going to stab this dude, right? I'm going to show these guys who keep putting me in trouble for stuff, or maybe I'm putting myself in trouble, but from a place of ignorance, not a place of maliciousness or bad intent. I feel like these fools are testing me, right? The homies. And so go ahead, keep fucking testing me. And let me show you what I can do. Obviously, I'm not going to take off on them. I'm not an idiot. But let me show you. And I have some anger and some aggression now, and I'm going to let that out on this little guy who's in here for a rape charge. And can nobody be mad at me for stabbing a fucking rapist, right? So, and you want him removed. It's a removal. I go to fish out the little pedazo. It's stuck. Because that curve, the way that he tied it, the string is pulling from the curve. So now behind the hole, it's like this, right? And it won't come out. And I'm like, fuck, man. And I'm messing with it. And I'm trying to stick other stuff in the vent from other angles to try to prop it. And my cellie's standing at the door. And I was like, bro, this shit ain't gonna work. Right? And I'm frustrated now. Fuck. And I could see the look on his face. It's like a smirk. And he's like, oh, well, I guess you just got to put hands on him. I was like, you did that shit on purpose, huh? He's like, relax, bro, it's chow time, let's go. And he did do it on purpose. And while I was upset at the time, he looked out for me in his own way. And so everything went as planned, right? Go to chow, kicking it, talking to the dude, come back up. I'm like, hey, when we get back, let's hurry up and go. And I'll shoot you some cigarettes at your cell, before they come and lock us down. Okay. And the dude is unsuspecting as can be, right? So we go walking over there towards his cell. And sure enough, there's no gun or no nothing. And so he gets to be in front of his cell, and I start getting off on him, right? Boom, boom, boom. And I'm not saying anything to him. I want to try to be quiet because I don't want to draw attention to what's going on. And I'm just kind of determined. So I'm letting him have it. And he falls up against this little wall. And the wall it's like the Corcoran shoe doors, for those that have been there. Or the bay shoe doors, very similar too. So it has these little holes. It's thick, but it has these holes everywhere. And so I do realize one time I miss him, right? Because I'm on him and he's skirts it up and he's not swinging back. He never swings on me. He's just trying to buckle. And I'm trying to get him like face shots or good shots, not just hit him in the back of the head, because that hurts when you keep hitting somebody in the back of the head, right? And remember, I'm trying to prove a point. And I wind up hitting that grill, boom, and I scratch up my knuckles. And that shit hurt. So I hear my cellie, he's standing in front of our cell. He's down a little bit. He's like, Rascal, that's good, Rascal. Kukui, that's good. And I was like, all right. So I come back in the cell, and he goes and walks over there, right, to where I just came from. He goes and walks over there. I don't hear it, but apparently he tells the dude, hey, when the CO comes to lock the bar right now, you need to tell him that you can't be here, and you better not fucking tell him why. And so then he comes back to the cell. Well, my hand is red, and it's already starting to get a little bit, not swollen big, but, you know, it's marked up. And he's like, hey, you got to be careful because, you know, this dude's gone, bro. They're likely to come by the cells and check hands. And they check hands, you're going to the hole. I said, fuck, what do? He says, sit on the toilet and soak your hand in the toilet. And I know that sounds disgusting to people that haven't been in prison. But for one, the inside of our toilet was amazingly clean, just like everything else in the cell. We washed clothes and everything, all kinds of stuff. But also that toilet bowl water is cold. It's the coldest water that you can get, basically. And I think that's true for about any prison. But certainly the ones I've been to. And so I set up the little half sheet to make it look like I'm using the bathroom, right? And I sit down and I just got my hand in the toilet water. And the CO walks by, right? The CO goes, and you can hear him at the cell. He goes, oh, what happened to you? All right. You guys, okay. And so grabs him, and the dude goes walking down the tier. CO locks the bar. And the dude goes walking down the tier, and he's got a sheet with his stuff in it. And he's walking. He doesn't even look towards our cell. The CO does, and he's like, and keeps going. So I'm trying to soak my hand. I'm trying to make sure that it doesn't get me caught up. They never came and checked hands. I never went to the hole. There was never nothing. My assumption is the COs know that fool's a rapist, right? They know what he's in there for. And they know that he's not going to be allowed to stay. And so, but who cares, right? Like, a lot of the COs harbor the same feelings, at least from kind of how it seemed to me. They harbor the same feelings towards rapists and child molesters and snitches that most of the general population holds, in terms of you get what you got coming. So that was cool, and the homeboys embraced. Okay, great, bro. You're cleaned up now. You did your cleanup. Good job. We seen him. He was kind of lumped up, bro. The dude running the yard made a comment. Man, you know, I'm not surprised you lumped him up, though. You know, he's smaller than you. And I'm like, what I can do, bro? I can't win. And so around that same time, and I think Rojo, from a convict's perspective, he actually gave me who he thought the guy was, because I don't remember his name. But he was up on a 5th tier, and I was out running around one day, and he called me up there. And I went up there, and this dude was hella pale, and he was soft-spoken. He didn't seem that old, but he was sharp. And I squatted down in front of his cell, and man, I must have hung out there for over an hour, right? And, you know, what are you in here for? What are you trying to do? You know, what is being a norteño to you? What is this all about? What do you think? And the sharpest person I had met in prison up to that point. And he was like, look, Holmes, I'm not going to be here too long. They're going to wind up coming and snatching me up and taking me to the adjustment center. But I'm not supposed to be here. I just kind of skated through. And so, you know, I've been hearing about you, and I've been seeing you. And I just wanted to kind of touch base with you, man. And you know, spend a little time with you before this opportunity is gone. You're going to be all right, Holmes. It's you know, everything's cool. The main line is different than reception. You know, and he had told me, actually, the dude that was first running the section, named Worm, I believe, from Sanjo, he had locked it up. And so I knew he disappeared, but I didn't know that he had locked it up. I was barely there at that time. And he's like, you know, Worm left this place disorganized, man, when he pulled his, you know, PC move. And so folks are just trying to, you know, figure it out. But anyways, it was dope. I don't remember the guy's name. I don't remember where he was from. He did not tell me his status. So I don't know, you know, if he was hermano, if he was NF, what he was. Now, in hindsight, I recognize he was clearly validated as something. But that was a long time ago. B, it was one conversation, and you know, you meet a lot of people over the years. But anyway, so go through that. I was pretty ticked off at my celly, but that's kind of an overview of my experiences in Quentin. Man, it was loud. I learned how to fish there. I learned how to spin a line. I ran into some cats that I would end up running into later on in the general population. But most of them I didn't. Oh, another one. So there's this dude, Joker, from Concord, right? And he was a little bit older. I lived in Concord for a few years before I caught my case. Concord, Pittsburgh. And so I was familiar with him, but it wasn't like we were homeboys, but I was familiar with who he was. And the idea was, or at least the narrative was, like he was solid. And he had been to the Y, and he had been to prison, and he was a big homie of sorts. Maybe not a big homie politically, because we weren't concerned with that stuff in the streets, but a big homie in the sense that he'd been places we hadn't, and was solid. No. Come to find out, he's not so solid. So he pulls up while I'm there. He comes back on a violation. He had gotten a car accident. So he has a cane. And it's like my first week there, I think. So he pulls up, but they put him on the bottom tier. And so we get a little filter that comes around. Joker from Concord's downstairs. He's no good. And I was like, wow, he's no good? Damn. You know, and it kind of showed me that there's a difference between what people say they are on the streets and what they actually are behind the wall. And whether it's fair or not every time is a case-by-case situation. But just because somebody's out there and they got some tattoos and they got a little size and they got these crazy stories about prison, talking to a bunch of people that never been to prison, doesn't mean that they are what they present themselves to be. And sometimes people are solid in prison and a bad call is made and they wind up getting deemed, and they go back to their neighborhood and just try to keep living like they were before they went to the joint. So that's why I say it's not always so simple. But so anyways, he winds up coming up the stairs. For a handicapped guy, he moved pretty good. He came all the way up the stairs and came to myself. And he's like, oh, what's up, Rascal? I heard you were up here. And I didn't have very much finesse or tact at the time. If I knew then what I knew later on, I would have tried to finesse him, right? Oh, man, what's up, homie? Good to see you. You know, yeah, how you doing? And try to make him comfortable. That is not what I did. I was like, fuck you, you're a fucking piece of shit. Get up from front of my door, bro. I get a chance, I'm gonna fucking stab you myself with that cane. And so I never got the chance. He wound up, you know, getting transferred to another institution like within a couple days. But again, not one of my most shining moments. But nobody had taught me that stuff. Nobody had kind of shown me the ropes too much. It was like you learn as you go along. And you learn when you make a mistake. Then somebody's like, hey, bro, you fucked up. You're like, oh, okay. Would have been cool if you told me that I was fucking up before I did it, but whatever. And so that was another situation, but also eye-opening for me, right? Like I said, in terms of people's status. So anyways, that's my brief little couple months that I spent in San Quentin. I wound up getting transpacked and going to Solano. It's funny because I thought I was going to Soledad. Because when I was down in R&R, you know, SOL is on your stuff. And people were like, oh, that's Soledad, that's Soledad, that's Soledad. I was like, man, where's Soledad? My grandfather actually helped build Soledad. That's a whole other story. Many years ago, when they used incarcerated people to build, you know, prisons. And so, but I didn't know where it was, you know what I mean? And so then they're like, oh no, we got to Solano. We went to Vacaville, dropped some people off. We went to Solano and they called me off the bus. And I was like, damn, I guess I'm going to Solano. And I remember the drive, you seem to go through like a little residential neighborhood where it's just like sidewalks and people with strollers and trees and houses. And then there was like a school. And all of a sudden you turn a corner and bam, you're out of prison. But that's, you know, stuff for a future spill. That's my little window of time in San Quentin. That was the start of a 10-year sentence, of which I did, you know, 9. Thankful to the SUIT program, The only good part about it was you don't really get a chance to catch write-ups when you're sitting in the shoe, unless you're a jackass to the COs, and we're not allowed to be that way. So I hope you guys have a good one, man. Have a blessed day. Strive to be a homie, man. Help others move in excellence. That's the movement. Take care.